Hey guys, in this video I'll show you how to build your own arcade stick with off-the-shelf parts. You should be able to put it together in less than 30 minutes. Having built a few arcade sticks with wood over the years, I know it can be very difficult, especially if you don't have the right tools. But in this build, I'm using a case and control panel with all the holes drilled already. There are a number of arcade sticks available from China for about $40. However, most of them may look nice on the surface, but the control panel is actually made of some cheap particle board wrapped in like graphics made of like paper or some sort of wallpaper, and over time when it gets wet it'll probably warp and deteriorate. The arcade stick in this build video will also cost as low as $40 as well, but it will have a more durable thick acrylic control panel. If you want to use real SANWA buttons, it will obviously cost more. A full SANWA setup will cost about $80. So here are the things you will need to build this arcade stick: a pre-made case with control panel, a USB encoder, 8 30mm buttons, and a joystick. Links to everything you need will be in the description if you're interested in making one. Here's the acrylic panel and case. I got it for about $20 on AliExpress. I was shocked when I got it in 5 days. Usually things from China take as long as 2 months, and it's nice to see it sooner than expected. The case is just an empty box with a thick acrylic panel. The panel is very thick and sturdy compared to other arcade sticks that you buy from China, where they use like a particle board type of material, which can deteriorate over time, especially if your hands are sweaty. And the bottom of the case has suction cups to hold it in place. If you find it a bit tacky, you can always remove it if you want. Next thing you'll need is a USB encoder. To keep things simple, I usually use the zero delay ones. There is no soldering required. It comes with wire harnesses with quick connects that plug to the encoder and your buttons and joystick. You can buy one separately for about $8, or a full set with buttons and joysticks for $20. For that price, obviously these won't be SANWA buttons, they will be clones. If you prefer to use real SANWA parts, 30mm SANWA buttons run about $3 each, and a real SANWA JLF joystick will run you about $25. The holes on the control panel are pre-drilled, and there is a protective film on the panel to keep it scratch free. Remember to peel it off before mounting the buttons and joystick. If you would like to add your own artwork, you'll need another sheet of clear plastic to sandwich the artwork. Typically you would use Lexan or plexiglass, but those are harder to drill and cut. So instead, I'm going to show you how to use a clear sheet from an IKEA picture frame. It's much thinner than plexiglass and easier to cut. It's also very inexpensive. I think I bought the frame for like $5. This step is completely optional because it will add a bit more complexity to this project. But if you want to add your own artwork, this is the way that I did it. The picture frame that I'm using is from IKEA and it's called Fiskbo. It is 16 by 20. There's 3 sizes, but the 16 by 20 actually has more material than you actually need. But if you do screw up, you have the ability to make another one. So that's why I got the bigger one, the 16 by 20. You can use the control panel itself as a template for you to cut out the clear material. Using a brand new sharp blade, cutting the material is actually very easy. Just running the blade over it a couple of times should be able to score it and then allow you to break it off. Anytime you're handling something sharp, make sure you're careful with it, or else you can cut yourself. Now we're going to cut the holes. So what you want to do is tape it to the control panel, and we're actually not going to be using a drill because that will probably crack it. Because the plastic is so thin, we can actually just use a sharp blade and then carefully score around the hole. So what you want to do here is just make sure that you're doing it very slowly. You know, there's no need to rush this part, because if you do it too fast, you may accidentally just overshoot it and then basically ruin the plastic. So just go slow, and then also make sure that you're applying a little bit more pressure than necessary. But what I found was this is actually much easier than trying to drill through it. There was one where I was trying to drill through it and it actually cracked the plastic. But what you want to do is just lightly score it, go over it a couple of times, and then you should be able to just punch it out with the back of the knife. So after scoring the plastic a couple of times, you can just basically break it off by using your fingers or the back of your knife. As you can see, it comes completely out, and if you find that it is difficult to remove it, you probably have to score it a few more times, and this is a lot easier than, say, using power tools, which might possibly crack the clear plastic. And again, remember to be very careful with a knife because it is sharp. It's recommended that you use a brand new blade, and make sure you are very careful with it because you can cut yourself. Test fit one of the buttons, and it doesn't have to be perfect because the button will hide the imperfections of the hole. So this is what it looks like after you have punched out all the holes. You can now go to the next step, which is to use the control panel to basically use it as a template to cut out your artwork. So the same thing applies. You basically use it to trace out whatever artwork that you have. To make holes for the screws, what I did was use a soldering iron, and I basically just used that to quickly melt a hole through the plastic. You can use a drill, but like I said, there's a possibility that you can crack the clear plexiglass there. So what I did was just use a soldering iron because it's a lot cleaner and quicker. And make sure you do this in a well ventilated area, and this way you don't inhale any toxic fumes that can come from melting the plastic. So after making the mounting holes, you can use the included screws and bolts to test fit that the holes do line up and it will connect to the base of the arcade stick. You can then use the included nuts to fasten it to the base as well. Next, it's time to install the USB encoder, and this basically is the brains of the system. It will work with PS3, PC, Mac, Raspberry Pis. This is the one that I use now in all of my arcade stick builds, and it's actually very affordable, and they do come with these quick disconnect harnesses that allow you to easily plug up to your joystick or your buttons. If you get it in the kit, it'll come with all the necessary wiring for your buttons and your joystick, so you don't have to worry about getting the right size. The very first cable to hook up is the USB connector, which will allow you to plug it up to your computer or gaming device, and there is a plug for it, and you can't really plug it into the wrong socket because they are different. To hook up one of the buttons to the USB encoder, use one of the quick disconnect wires and plug it up to your buttons, and then plug it onto the USB encoder itself. The USB encoder does come with a wiring diagram, but it doesn't really tell you specifically what the buttons correspond to. If you're using it with a PC or a Mac or a Raspberry Pi, it doesn't really matter because you can always remap the buttons. If you're going to use it with, say, a Sony PlayStation 3, you will have to wire it this way, and this is how I did it so that it will work with the PlayStation 3 because these buttons corresponds to the buttons on the PlayStation. Here's all the connectors all wired up to the USB encoder. You can tidy it up by using some zap straps and everything, but what you should do is test fit it and then plug it up to your computer or your PlayStation, and then make sure that all the buttons are working before you screw it down. So here I'm going to test it on Street Fighter 4 for the Sony PlayStation 3, and you can go into the button configuration, and this is how it's mapped. Next, I'll test out Fightcade on Mac OS X. Here I'm running Street Fighter Alpha 3, and you can see how well it works as well. So after testing out the arcade stick and making sure that the electronics work, you can basically close it up and put on all the screws and bolts. And what I did was remove the suction cup on the bottom. I thought it kind of looked a little ugly. Instead, I put these basically rubber stoppers instead, and they work pretty good. They don't hold down as well as suction cups, but they prevent the stick from moving. And the stick is a little light, but there is room in there for you to add weights and whatnot to make it a little heavier, to give it a little bit more basic weight to it so it doesn't slide around. And as you can see, the glossy finish looks really nice. I also put in some original SANWA buttons in here as well, so they work a lot better compared to the clone ones. But it's up to you because they do cost a little more. Since this is a custom build, you can use whatever electronics you want or buttons you want. It's all really up to you and how much you want to spend. So you can spend as low as $40 and as much as $100. I've built arcade sticks before, and it can be very difficult, especially when you're trying to make the casing for it and the control panel, and it uses a lot of power tools which most people don't have. I decided to remove the custom art because I thought it looked a little better just plain black, but you can do whatever you want. You can add whatever artwork you want with the basically the IKEA picture frame that I showed you, which you can use to sandwich the artwork. So but I think I'm just gonna keep it this way because I think it looks pretty cool. Anyways, that's it for this tutorial. Comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.